Hi again. In the first lesson we marked up our text for the browser to know the meaning of the various parts of the article. Now it's time to add some style to this. By default the articles will be presented using the browser's own style sheet, which is legible but not exactly pleasurable. By applying our own CSS we can form the content into a more pleasing shape. White space, leading, typography, contrasts, anything we want. So let's take a look at the HTML that we've got going on here. We could write our CSS within a style tag in our head elements, which gives us this. Although that would make it hard to maintain over time. So since most web pages are more than just one page, we will link to a style sheet, and it's placed in our styles folder. You can name it whatever you want. I like to call it styles. Intro CSS. That will then get the information from our CSS file, and we can use one CSS file across many different pages. As the page is now, it's working quite well on mobile and desktop. All we have to make sure is that we don't do anything to break that. So I'll keep my browser window quite narrow to start with. This is known as the mobile first methodology, and we can enhance it later on. So I'm going to start with some defaults setting up for the body element, inherited by its child elements, hence the cascade in cascading style sheet. First I will set up some typography. Sans serif fonts aren't as legible on screens unless you have a high-res retina screen. So I will start with Helvetica and fall back to a sans serif, which basically means if the user has Helvetica installed, it will display Helvetica. If it doesn't, use any of the sans serif fonts that they have. I'm going to set the font size to 1em. M is relative units. Most browsers default to 16 pixels. We could also say 16 pixels. It will come out as the same because I haven't changed it in mine. But some users do change their settings because they might be nearsighted or any other reason. So we should allow them to have the size they want. Also I want to add some line height. That is a unitless measurement because it's based on the font size. This gives us a little bit more of white space, so it makes it easier to track the text when you're scanning the page. Another important bit to add is color and background color, because users can also set their background colors, and if they have set it to dark gray and we don't set our background color, but we do set our color, the color is then for our text, and we might end up with our black text on the user's dark gray background, which would make it very hard to read. So although I've set this now, it doesn't actually make any difference in our browser, but at least now we know that they've been set and they won't accidentally clash with anything else. Also, I'm gonna remove the browser's default margins around the edges and add in some padding instead. So we have a bit of consistency. There we go. The text doesn't quite go out to the sides anymore, so it's a bit easier to read. And then we can move on to our typography. It's a pretty simple page. We only have 4 text elements. I'm gonna just enter those in quickly now. We got H1, H2, paragraphs, and our ordered lists. We have a font size 5 rand. I would like for it to be center aligned because it's the main header. I then zero out the margins, but I add in what I want. As you see, I'm using the shorthand CSS declaration here rather than spelling it all out. We could also go margin top 0, margin left 0, and so and the same for right and bottom, although this is much quicker, and it goes as following: top, right, bottom, and left. So we've added a bit of margin for the bottom and zeroed out the rest of the edges. Also adding some padding. That should change it considerably. That turns out a bit too large, so I'm gonna scale it down a bit. Because I don't know the size, but I still want it big, I'm gonna use a measurement called viewpoint width to see how that turns out. That's a bit small. Let's crank it up a bit. There you go, that's looking better. And as you see, it scales with the size of the browser window. Pretty nifty. Okay, let's finish our typography. As you see in my ordered list, I've added some indentation on the left hand side here. It's because if I set it to 0, we will lose our numbering and it will end up on the outsides of our list, and I want it to be on the flush on the inside. Now let's see how we're doing. There we go. I would like the headers to stand out a bit more, and since they're considerably larger than the body copy, I think it would be okay to use a serif font here. Now, rather than adding the same declaration in both H1 and H2, we can group them together and make the declaration only once. Now we have a bit of a contrast between the body copy and the headers. Let's have a little bit look at the layouts. As we can see, there is two sections here, two articles, and luckily in HTML5 we have something that lets us mark that up. Let's go back to the HTML and mark that up. So we have article. I still like to do my formatting nicely, so we'll do that. There we go, and article. Now it doesn't actually change anything yet, but it also gives us a hook for our CSS where we can add some styling. So I'm sticking with 1.5 and multiples of 1.5. This is because that is the line height we have in body, and that gives us a vertical rhythm in our typography and our layouts, which makes it more comfortable for reading. And we're doing the same margin as we've done everywhere else. So now we should get a little bit more space in between this last paragraph and the top of the header. But our image is still completely breaking the layouts. So we need to make the image fluid, meaning it will scale to fit the width of whatever width its parent column in, which in now this case is article. First thing we need to do is to get rid of these hard-coded sizes. That's not going to change anything yet because it's loading nicely, but now then we can add some image. Let's make it responsive, so we want it to be maximum 100% wide, and for the height to scale automatically according to the width. And now we see it fits quite nicely in regardless of width. Beautiful. Still, it's just looking black and white, so let's add some color in. I will change my body background color to blue. That makes the black text on a dark blue background isn't quite as nice, so we can also add in some background color on our different sections. So the header, I would like that to have a white background, and the same for my articles. As you see, the margin shows up as little blue lines between, and we have a nice blue frame around everything. So now, if we look at full screen, it does look a bit funny. It could do with some more white space for starters. So to start with, to access all this, I will add a media query starting with a arbitrary width, and I will adjust it from there. So we go add media for screens, we're targeting screens, and a min width of, let's just say 600 pixels. Now everything that goes in here now will be only applied when this browser window is wider than 600 pixels. For the body, which we also had up here, but now I'm gonna set some new values. I'm still doing this in multiples of 1.5, so let's add a padding of 3 ems. Refresh, so far nothing, but as I go wider, you can see a little snap there. We get some more space around it. Now that doesn't quite align with the other ones. Let's add to those as well. In our article margin, we have the same one as before, and then 3 rem and 0. Let's have a look. There we go. Oh, looks like I forgot my header. We need to put it in there as well. Now it's looking all the same. Now on a big screen, oh, it still gets very wide. Let's just add a max width and align in the center. So that goes on body. We can go and add in a max width of 60 ems, which means 60 characters roughly, which is a comfortable line length for reading. And we want the margins to be, still have the margins to be 0, but I'm gonna add auto to the left and right sides. This is another shorthand. This is the same as writing 0 auto 0 auto, but since it's repeating, we can get away with writing it once. And now we'll see it sticks there. Now, let's see, with all the extra space we have on the desktop, I would like these two paragraphs, two articles, to flow into columns, 2 columns next to each other, rather than one long column like we can do on the mobile. To do that, I am going to add a non-semantic div wrapper around the articles and give it a class of columns. Actually, it can be any name you want. It can be spaceship for that sake. We are free to call classes what we want them to. Of course, it helps if they make somewhat sense to us. A div is simply a non-semantic wrapper element, which is useful when we need extra hooks in situations like that, or to box things in. You can add any classes to any HTML element and as many as you wish, which lets you keep your class name even if you change your HTML element, and you don't need to rewrite your CSS. So say if I wanted to add a class here, and I decided, oh, I don't want this to be a numbered list, I want it to be a bullet list. We change the wrapper there, we can keep the class name and we'll still apply the same styles. Say line height, typography, colors and so on. Obviously the numbering and the bullets will change. So that gives us a hook for our columns, and I'm going to do this really easy and use Flexbox. We've got our 2 columns. I'm using Flexbox, which has got pretty good support in all modern browsers. And if the user is using an old browser, they'll still get the 1 column, which is okay. The text and the image is still there. I don't need to add any more Flexbox code because the Flexbox by default horizontally aligns the items with an equal width. We're finished. We have a fully responsive, mobile optimized web page. I hope you enjoyed it.